I hope you will all come. This should be an absolutely wonderful program. Next Tuesday on April 17th, 6 to 7:30 at City Club Commons, AGRA, which is our alternative forum, will be sponsoring a program on childhood obesity, on public policy and legislation related to childhood obesity. We'll have 4 experts from OHSU there. There is no charge. Please RSVP, though, to Kim McCool at City Club. The next Tuesday, April 25th, 5:30 at City Club, we will be hosting Matt Leininger, author of The Next Form of Democracy, How Expert Rule is Giving Way to Shared Governance and Why Politics Will Never Be the Same. Larry Wallach, who's the Dean at PSU of the College of Urban and Public Affairs, will be interviewing our guest. There will be no charge again, it's at City Club Commons, but please again RSVP to Kim McCool. Please take a look at your bulletin for next week. That's the April 20th version, because we have 2 ballot measure reports that are printed there. The one on the form of government and on the Portland Development Commission. And then next Friday, we will debate and vote on those items. So those of you who are City Club members, please remember that we're on a different schedule next week. The doors will open at 11 a.m. The presentation will begin at 11:30, followed by our regular Friday program, the one on green buildings that I just mentioned, at 12:15. And in addition, City Club will host a debate on those very ballot measures the next week. We are so fortunate at City Club to have great corporate citizens here in Portland that help make our programs possible. Our quarterly sponsors are Schwabe, Williamson & Wyatt, and KeyBank. Would you please join me in thanking our sponsors? I'd like to also add, with regard to membership, that those of you who are here from the World Affairs Council, we'd love to have you join City Club. We have many interests in common, and we'd love to have you be part of City Club of Portland. Our program today is entitled Promoting Trade and Peace in South Korea with Ambassadors Lee Tae-Sik and Alexander Vershbow. I would like to introduce Maria Wolf, who will be introducing our speakers, but first a few words about Maria. Maria is president of the World Affairs Council of Oregon, which is the state's oldest and largest international affairs organization. The Oregon Council is affiliated with the World Affairs Councils of America. In 2005, the Oregon Council received the President's Award as the most dynamic mid-sized council in the U.S. Congratulations. Maria has lived in Morocco, the former Yugoslavia, England. She's traveled extensively in 60 countries, and prior to joining the World Affairs Council of Oregon, she worked for over 20 years in international business. Maria holds a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in history and international relations, a certificate in Eastern European studies, as well as a graduate degree from Harvard University. Please welcome Maria Wolf.
Thank you, Susan, and thank all of you for coming to this very special event today. It's really a pleasure for the World Affairs Council to be able to collaborate with City Club. And I do want to encourage those of you who are City Club members to please join the World Affairs Council. We would love to have you. I also wanted to thank the Korea Economic Institute, the sponsor of the national tour for the ambassadors. They have some very interesting materials on the back table, very educational, and I would encourage you to pick those up on your way out. I'm going to introduce both ambassadors, and then they will follow each other. Ambassador Vershbow will speak first, but in the interests of equality, I will give the introduction for Ambassador Lee first. Ambassador Lee Tai-Sik is a career diplomat whose service to his country covers 4 decades and 4 continents. After passing the High Diplomatic Service examination and joining the ministry in 1973, Ambassador Lee served in various locations around the globe, including Liberia, the Philippines, Austria, Yugoslavia, and the European Union, among others. He has also held several senior-level positions in the Korean government, including Director General of the International Trade Bureau at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Deputy Executive Director of the Korean Peninsula Energy Development Organization. In 2000, his first ambassadorial posting was as ambassador to Israel, where he served until 2002, when he was called back to serve as Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs. In his capacity as Deputy Foreign Minister, he led Korean delegations in various security negotiations and consultations, particularly those addressing North Korea's nuclear issues. In 2003, he became the Korean ambassador to the Court of St. James in the United Kingdom, and in 2005 became Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade back in Seoul, and became Korea's ambassador to the United States in October of 2005. Ambassador Lee is a graduate of the Department of International Relations at Seoul National University and the School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins University. Ambassador Alexander Vershbow became ambassador to the Republic of Korea in October 2005. He is a career member of the American Foreign Service with the rank of career minister and has extensive experience in East-West relations, non-proliferation, and European security affairs. From 2001 to 2005, Alexander Vershbow served as U.S. ambassador to the Russian Federation. During his tenure, the ambassador worked to promote U.S.-Russian cooperation in the areas of counterterrorism and counterproliferation, and to expand the agenda to encompass new challenges such as HIV, AIDS, and intellectual property issues. From 1998 until 2001, Alexander Vershbow served as U.S. ambassador to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Ambassador Vershbow was centrally involved in transforming NATO to meet post-Cold War challenges, including the admission of new members and the development of relations with Russia. In 2001, Secretary of State Colin Powell awarded Ambassador Vershbow the State Department's Distinguished Service Award for his work at NATO. From 94 to 97, Ambassador Vershbow served as Special Assistant to the President and Senior Director for European Affairs at the National Security Council. During this period, he helped shape U.S. foreign policy toward NATO, the conflicts in the former Yugoslavia, and NATO-Russia relations. Former Secretary of Defense William Cohen presented him with the first annual Joseph Krusel Award for his contributions to the cause of peace. He is a graduate in Russian and East European Studies from Yale and has a master's in international relations from Columbia University. It's a great pleasure to welcome both of these gentlemen to Portland.
Well, it's great to be in Portland, and thank you very much, Maria, for the introduction. And thanks both to you and Susan Hammer for hosting this event. If, like me, you've had the opportunity to travel to Korea or to visit Ambassador Lee's excellent website, you're probably familiar with the slogan, Dynamic Korea. I find it to be a very accurate description of what it feels like to be on the streets of Seoul, where the air seems to be laden with energy, enthusiasm, even a kind of effervescence. You can feel the can-do attitude of the people. I've been in countries that are rising, countries that have reached a plateau, and countries in decline. But these days, we hear a great deal about the rise of China, and deservedly so. But if you spend even a few minutes in Seoul, you can clearly see that the Republic of Korea is on the rise, and that a truly exceptional transformation within that country is underway. I feel very fortunate to be serving in Korea during such a dynamic part of its history. It's exciting to drive through Seoul at night. You see centuries-old gates and palace walls lit very gracefully from below, while billboard-sized flat-screen TVs are ablaze with advertisements from the buildings above. Stores, shops, and karaoke rooms are competing for your attention with the brilliance of their neon lights. And if Seoul is a bustling city by day, at night you can really see and feel the vibrancy of modern Korea, even amidst the ancient roots of Korean culture and society. Now, in my 18 months as U.S. ambassador, I've realized that it's not just Korea that is dynamic. The United States' relationship with Korea is also changing and growing as well. With new energy and enthusiasm, it's transforming into a more mature, healthy, and balanced partnership. One of the greatest examples of this, of the dynamism in our bilateral relationship is the recently concluded Korea-US Free Trade Agreement, or KORUS FTA. Until a few years ago, the United States and South Korea had a rather contentious trade relationship, and our economic dialogue consisted mostly of the United States pressuring Korea to lift its trade barriers. The contrast with 2007 couldn't be more stark. We just concluded a comprehensive FTA. It's an agreement negotiated voluntarily by both sides that will make the United States and the Republic of Korea each other's privileged partner across the Pacific. Now, the US Congress and the Korean National Assembly still have to ratify this important trade accord, but it's really hard to overstate the magnitude of the change that this agreement represents. You may have heard that this is the largest free trade agreement that Korea has ever negotiated, and it's the largest FTA our country has negotiated since NAFTA in the early 90s. Tariffs on virtually all manufactured goods and agricultural products traded between our two countries will be eliminated, with 94% of both sides' industrial tariffs disappearing within the first 3 years. In addition, the FTA has chapters that address other non-tariff barriers, such as intellectual property protection, guarantees for investment, service sector barriers, and technical barriers to trade or standards. Now, there may be some areas where each side might have liked to get more from the FTA, but a fundamental tenet of any negotiation is that neither side gets 100% of what it wants. We should not let the perfect be the enemy of what, in this case, is the very, very good. Now, first and foremost, the FTA will boost trade and investment in both directions. While we're starting from different baseline levels of trade, we'll both see our exports go up as the benefits of tariff elimination and removal of non-tariff barriers begin to come through. Secondly, by implementing measures that will create a more hospitable environment for foreign investment, Korea should be able to attract more US investors, better positioning itself as a Northeast Asia hub. Finally, by opening our two economies to greater competition, both of us will see efficiency gains, leading to more economic growth and job creation. Greater efficiency means enhanced competitiveness, which is something that's very important as we deal with the rise of new economic powers like China and India. Now, it's important to note that the impact of this FTA will go far beyond bilateral commercial benefits. It's also a powerful symbol of the US-Korea partnership, augmenting our longstanding security alliance and the robust ties between the Korean and American people. It will really be a new dynamic reflecting both the growing sophistication of our bilateral relationship and the Republic of Korea's increasingly positive global role in the world. I think that as Korea looks for credible international partners, the United States is the natural choice, for we're a country that brings no regional, territorial issues or uncertain motivation to the table. The many Korean friends of America may not make it onto CNN the way that the protesters sometimes do, but the successful completion of the FTA negotiations and the strong support that it's already generated in Korea clearly demonstrate that the protesters do not speak for the majority of the Korean people, who are confident of their ability to compete in the world market and who value their partnership with the United States. Now, in order for our two countries to thrive economically, we must continue to maintain peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula and in the region. Security has always been, and it remains, the cornerstone of the US-ROK alliance. But extensive changes in South Korea's society, economy, and its military forces are prompting dynamic changes in our security alliance as well. One thing hasn't changed, and that's our strong commitment to our Korean allies as embodied in the US-Korean Mutual Defense Treaty that was signed 54 years ago. What is changing is that in sharp contrast to South Korea's need for US military assistance in the 1950s, today's highly capable Korean military is taking greater responsibility for Korea's own defense and also helping the citizens of Iraq and Afghanistan rebuild their war-torn lives. A South Korean is now Secretary General of the United Nations and the ROK is sending peacekeepers to Lebanon. So as a result of the impressive achievements in the abilities of the South Korean military and the global transformation of our own armed forces, Seoul and Washington have recently reached an agreement to transfer wartime operational control from the US-led Combined Forces Command to the Korean military in April 2012. As with the transfer of peacetime operational control back in the 1990s, this is the next step in the continuing evolution of the strong and trusted alliance that exists between our two countries. Other changes that are going on include the relocation of US Forces Korea away from prime real estate in downtown Seoul to a new and improved hub to the south in the town of Pyeongtaek. From there, we'll be able to carry out our continuing alliance responsibilities for as long as the security partnership between our two countries endures. And I think that's going to be for a very long time. Now, transfer of operational control and the free trade agreement show the dynamic pace at which Korean society is moving. But what I also find particularly fascinating are Korea's young people, who are at the leading edge of that change. You really see them everywhere, listening to their MP3 players and talking, watching movies, taking pictures, video conferencing, and even surfing the net, all on their cell phones. The reach of mobile technology in today's Korea is a preview of what we may see here in the States a few years from now. My two sons love to visit Korea because they say you can see the future there. And many young Koreans are active in civil society. Unlike their parents and grandparents, today's Korean youth have grown up in a country that's marked by democracy and relative affluence. Young Koreans are not only the most wired group in the world, they're also informed and outspoken about their views, exerting significant influence on both political and social discourse in Korea today. They're also proud, and rightly so, of their country, its accomplishments, and the global appeal of Korean culture. The so-called Korean wave of movies, TV soap operas, and music stars has already swept across Asia with great success, and it's now beginning to reach the shores of the United States. I think you may have heard the Korean film The Host has been showing in theaters across America, getting hit reviews on this side of the Pacific as well as back in Korea. And while my own tastes tend to run more towards classic rock and jazz, it's impossible to argue with the success of Korea's pop superstar Rain, who has become one of the first true Asian crossover artists on the American music scene. It's hard to go even any higher than being Time Magazine's second most influential artist of the year in 2006. Now, in today's dynamic Korea, many cultural and societal paradigms are also shifting, opening up new possibilities for Korean women. Last year, Korea named its first female prime minister. This year, one of the serious contenders for the presidential election in December is a woman. And later in the year, one or two more female candidates may enter the race. Now there are many more women in the workforce, and many young Korean women feel that having children and even marriage are optional. Now there are repercussions, of course. South Korea now has the lowest birth rate among OECD countries, and Korean men are finding it harder and harder to get hitched. But interestingly, intercultural marriages in Korea now account for 35 to 40% of all new marriages in the rural regions. Now, as South Koreans become more linked to the world outside, they're thinking of themselves as global citizens, and they feel responsible for helping those around them. NGOs tell us that Koreans are quick to donate both money and manpower for global relief efforts like the Pakistan earthquake or the Asian tsunami. And I witnessed this firsthand when I arrived in Seoul a year and a half ago, soon after Hurricane Katrina. Many individual Koreans mailed in money. Some even gave as much as $100,000. It was a really moving experience that provided me with a much better understanding of Korean generosity and also the affinity most Koreans feel toward America. Now, over the years, South Korea's relationship with and its views about North Korea have evolved considerably. Many younger South Koreans view the North not so much as an enemy, but as a country of fellow Koreans with the same culture and history, but now down on their luck and in need of economic and humanitarian assistance. Some Koreans remain very concerned about the threat to security and stability posed by the North, but my observation is that the threat perception is lower than it used to be. But across the spectrum, South Koreans stand with the rest of the international community in seeking a denuclearized North Korea. Toward this end, South Korea has joined with the United States and the other countries in the six-party process in delivering a firm response to North Korea's provocative actions of last year, the missile launches in July and the nuclear test in October. The Koreans have worked closely with us in laying the basis for the resumption of the six-party talks at the end of last year, and in sending a clear message to the North that it must live up to its obligations to denuclearize. On February 13th, the parties agreed on a series of concrete initial actions to be carried out over a 60-day period that would start the process of implementing the breakthrough agreement that was reached 2 years ago, the joint statement of September 19th, 2005. In that agreement, North Korea agreed to get rid of all of its nuclear weapons and its existing nuclear programs. And in return, the other parties agreed to provide economic and energy assistance, to normalize political relations, to negotiate a permanent peace regime, to replace the temporary, or so-called temporary armistice that ended the Korean War 54 years ago, and to work toward peace and security in the wider Northeast Asia region. Now, unfortunately, there have been some technical issues that have complicated the implementation of the February 13th agreement. But we and our partners are determined to keep up the momentum. In particular, we expect the North Koreans to fulfill their commitment to shut down and seal, for the purpose of eventual abandonment, the nuclear reactor and reprocessing facility at Yongbyon, which has produced plutonium for several nuclear weapons, and to do so with monitoring and verification by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Only then will the North receive the energy aid that was promised under the February 13th agreement. So we really need to quickly get these initial actions completed, because there's even more work to be done in the next phase of the process, the disablement of all of the North Koreans' nuclear facilities, and a complete declaration by the North of all of its nuclear programs that will ultimately be eliminated. As our chief negotiator, Ambassador Chris Hill, has said, it's our goal to accomplish all these steps, both phase 1 and phase 2, before the end of this year. And the North will only get additional economic aid and steps towards normal political relations if it fulfills its obligations on the denuclearization track. And let me stress that all of the steps that we want to achieve this year are only a way station on the way to the ultimate goal, which is the complete dismantlement of North Korea's nuclear weapons and existing nuclear programs. It's only with the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea that we can agree to full normalization of our relations and the conclusion of a permanent peace regime on the Korean Peninsula. So these are ambitious goals, but we do believe that they can be achieved, and we'd like to see the whole process finished during 2008. And we hope the North Koreans have the political will to do so. We stand ready to do our part if they do. Now, before closing, just 2 words about one other important issue on our agenda. It's that of providing visa-free travel for Koreans who wish to visit the United States. Last year, our embassy in Seoul processed more than 450,000 visas, the largest number of any embassy in the world, and we could break 500,000 this year. But this is a distinction that I'm very much determined to lose, to facilitate not only more travelers, but safer and more secure travel. I sincerely hope we can make real progress towards full Korean participation in the visa waiver program. There's currently legislation pending in the Congress that could allow for that. Different versions of the bill have been passed by the Senate and the House, and we don't yet know what the conference committee will decide, but I'm hopeful and certainly supportive of Korea's efforts to join the visa waiver program. So to conclude, the times are clearly changing, and South Korea is experiencing a very dynamic present, and it has a very dynamic future in store. As our two countries cooperate to achieve common goals, such as denuclearizing North Korea, increasing our bilateral trade and investment, and safer and easier travel, I expect our alliance will grow stronger, healthier, and more resilient than ever before. So I'm very optimistic about the future. Our relationship not only is based on shared history, but also on shared interests and shared values. So I appreciate the opportunity to give you my thoughts about the Korean-American relationship, and I recommend that you all come and see Dynamic Korea for yourselves. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here with you today. We have visited many places to make our case in terms of how strong our two countries' relationship has been maintained over the decades. But here in this beautiful city of Portland, we have such a large audience, and it's really our great pleasure to talk with you. Again, it's great to be here in Portland. When the City Club, Mercy Cause, and the World Affairs Council all join hands, you certainly achieve a wonderful confluence of civic, foreign policy, and humanitarian interests. So I'd like to thank these three impressive organizations for your hospitality, and I am pleased that all of you could join us today. And my particular appreciation goes to Korea Society and Korea Foundation in Oregon. Dr. Joseph Ha, who is a senior executive at the Nike, who has been a strong advocate of ever-expanding relationship between Korea and the United States. He has joined us. And also, Ann Kim, thank you very much for your beautiful rose that you have delivered us at the airport. I didn't know that rose is the symbol of your great state of Oregon. And Anne reminded us that fact, and we were very pleased. Thank you very much. Following last year, Ambassador Vershbow and I are touring several American cities to promote the dynamic Korea-US partnership in terms of political, military, economic, and otherwise relationship. And indeed, it's an exciting time in our alliance. We hope this forum will provide some insight on the latest developments, particularly with regard to the free trade agreement and North Korean nuclear issue as well. So let me just focus on military and political relationship as a beginning. If you look back over the past 50 years at the daunting array of challenges our relationship has faced, I think you will find that it is a remarkable, even unparalleled success story. From repelling communism on the Korean Peninsula to constructing a leading industrial economy, from the struggle to secure democracy to the efforts to become a contributing member of world community. None of these achievements was a given. In fact, most were considered long shots. But with the unique bond of understanding and commitment our two countries share, we overcame the odds and challenges. Our Korea-US alliance saw us through. Continuing this track record of success, I am pleased to note that this past year produced two more significant achievements. The first concerns the United Nations. For Korea, the UN has always meant more than just another global institution. After all, it was under the auspices of the United Nations that our country fought off communism and gained its independence. So it is somewhat of a paradox that it took 40 years more and the Cold War's demise before we are actually admitted as a formal member of that particular organization. That was in 1991. Last year, however, 15 years later, a South Korean was elected to top office of UN Secretary General, as Ambassador Vershbow mentioned. So when our former foreign minister took the helm of January 1st of this year, it was definitely a feeling for Korea of coming full circle, from a poor recipient country to a position where we are now able to provide leadership to the organization. We owed you a lot for this. The other milestone of this past year is the successful negotiation of Korea-US Free Trade Agreement. This free trade agreement is literally a big deal, marrying the world's largest and the 10th largest economies into the biggest bilateral free trade pact in the world since NAFTA of 1993. Of course, there were times during the marathon negotiations when the outcome was not clear, especially as the talks passed not one, but two so-called final deadlines. But in the end, with vision, flexibility, and leadership from the highest levels of our two governments, our negotiators prevailed. And the result is a historic, high-quality, and forward-looking agreement. This FTA is a triumph on several levels for the Korean and US economies, for consumers of our two countries who are the ultimate beneficiaries of this, and for the overall future of our alliance. First, this FTA will propel our two countries' economic relationship to a higher dimension. According to the US International Trade Commission, the FTA would expand American exports to Korea by as much as $19 billion per year, while South Korean export could realize a $10 billion boost. For Korea, President Roh Moo-hyun has risked alienating many of his core supporters in a bold effort to advance Korea's global competitiveness and economic success. His position is that with improved access to the world's largest and most sophisticated market, this FTA with the United States will serve as a springboard for South Korea to become an advanced economy. For the US, President Bush summed it up well when he noted that this FTA will, as I quote, generate export opportunities for US farmers, ranchers, manufacturers, and service suppliers, and promote economic growth and the creation of better paying jobs in the United States, and I unquote. For example, under the agreement, $1.9 billion worth of US farm exports to Korea will become duty-free immediately. In addition, with regard to US beef, the largest US agricultural export product to Korea, at $100 million in 2003, $900 million in 2003, the duties will be eliminated completely over the years. Here in your great state of Oregon, I was told that Korea has become the third largest trading partner for the state of Oregon. And we have imported a lot from your great state in terms of manufactured goods, and agricultural goods as well. The total value that we have imported from Oregon on these products was about 1.9 billion. So Korea has become quite a strong and important trading partner for Oregon. That makes me very happy to be here with you. The agreement will also open up the Korean auto market to US cars, not only by immediately removing its existing 8% duties, but also by simplifying its tax structure and reducing existing tax rates. At the same time, the FTA will expand market access and investment opportunities in many services sectors, including telecommunications, finance, audiovisual, and business services. And here in the state of Oregon, we have one distinguished Korean company which has opened its own production facilities. That company is Hynix. Hynix established its production facilities somewhere in Eugene, and it employs about 1,150 employees, contributing a lot to the local economy. So with this FTA, our investment in the US will much more significantly increase. Overall, this FTA will provide new access to Korea's prosperous market of 48 million people. Furthermore, increased access to the Korean market can provide American companies an important new foothold in the dynamic Asian region, where the US has been losing market share to European, Japanese, and Chinese competitors. This should be particularly good news for Oregon. The second big winners in the FTA is consumers who will benefit from greater choices and more affordable prices, a point that sometimes gets lost in the arcane policy debate. Within the first 3 years, this FTA would remove tariffs on nearly 94% of the product categories we trade. And after 10 years, virtually all remaining tariffs will be eliminated. So from automobiles and pork to digital televisions and textiles, citizens in both our countries will be better off. Finally, besides benefiting both business and consumers, the FTA provides a boon to our overall bilateral relationship as our enhanced economic alliance powerfully reinforces our traditional security-based alliance. You could think of the FTA as adding a steady gust of wind in our alliance sails. In fact, the Korea-US FTA is our most significant agreement since the 1953 Mutual Defense Treaty that established the Korea-US alliance. We expect it will take some work over the coming months for our respective legislatures to ratify this agreement, so we could certainly welcome your support in this effort as well. On the political front, Korea and the US have started to have strategic dialogues on global affairs. Our foreign minister sits down regularly with the US Secretary of State for strategic bilateral discussions on a range of bilateral, regional, and international issues. In this context, our two nations are working together on such vital global concerns as terrorism, WMD proliferation, human rights, poverty, and the environment. On the security front, we are looking to the future as well. Having recently addressed such key alliance issues as the relocation and realignment of US forces in Korea, strategic flexibility issue, wartime operational control, as Ambassador Vershbow has noted, and burden sharing as well. So these changes in our military alliance partnership is for the better of our two countries' partnership not for the worse. This is the evolution of our relationship, and this is also the maturation of our military partnership. Here, Korea is also taking more responsibility in the defense of the country, which was not the case in the past. We were somewhat dependent upon the United States in its own country's defense. After this change and realignment and readjustment in our two countries' alliance partnership, our two countries' military partnership will become much more stronger, and yet we will have equal share in taking the responsibilities. So we are going to take more responsibility compared with previous years, and we are going to coordinate more effectively and cooperate more effectively. That's what we are doing in terms of our military partnership. So U.S. commitment to the defense of South Korea is not going to be weakened. Rather, it's going to be much more efficient and effective, taking advantage of the changing relationship between our two countries. The most daunting and critical challenge we face at the moment is the North Korea's nuclear problem. It is vital that we resolve this problem, or we risk living under nuclear fear. And the ramification of a nuclear North Korea extend even beyond the Korean Peninsula to Northeast Asia and elsewhere, with the danger of nuclear proliferation and the possibility of regional nuclear arms race. After more than a decade of negotiations on this subject, we know that engaging North Korea is not only strategically important, but extremely complicated and complex. We also know that this issue can be fully resolved only when North Korea becomes a responsible member of the international community. Therefore, this challenge requires a comprehensive approach and strategy. The North Korean nuclear issue cannot be resolved solely as a security problem. We need a multifaceted approach which involves a range of both political and economic efforts. These include efforts to normalize relations with North Korea, establish a permanent peace regime on the Korean Peninsula, and build a regional security mechanism while promoting economic integration. The roadmap we are using is the September 19, 2005 joint statement, which was agreed by all 6 parties and contains all the basic principles for resolution of the North Korea nuclear issue. To this end, this past February, the 6-party talks in Beijing produced an important step-by-step plan to implement this comprehensive agreement. So in other words, in this phase, we are moving from talk to action. But the talks hit a snag due to some technical difficulties in a banking matter that North Korea and US were working to resolve. Fortunately, we are now getting back on track as we proceed toward the ultimate objective of attaining permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula. People sometimes still ask whether North Korea is serious about abandoning its nuclear program or whether they can be trusted. However, the commitments North Korea has made on September 19, 2005 and February 13 this year are positive indication that North Korea is willing to go down the right path, the path that we will lead to peace on the Korean Peninsula and the region, and eventually to becoming a responsible member of community of nations by dismantling its all nuclear facilities. Looking ahead, Korea and the US should continue to gather our wisdom and strengthen our coordination with confidence. This way, our enhanced Korea-US alliance, along with improved inter-Korean positions, can work in tandem like 2 wheels on a car. Considering our track record over the past 50 years, I believe we are up to meeting any challenges that may come our way. In sum, our half-century alliance has met every major challenges we have faced, and we have successfully overcome. Today, we are deeply engaged in consultation and cooperation to meet the challenges of the next half-century. Particularly during the last few years, our two countries' leadership has worked very hard to get and keep our alliance on the right track. You can think of it like renovating a house. You may need to modernize or expand it, and there is bound to be noise and sometimes occasional setback in the process. And yet, in the end, you have a place that's more livable and functional for all. Likewise, the Korea-US alliance is not a static one, but a relationship that we continue to restructure, modernize, and fine-tune to reflect our mutual interests and objectives. As Ambassador Vershbow observed, our alliance will go through with vibrant and dynamic change and transformation. And with our common history, shared values and forward-looking objectives, we believe the future will indeed be bright. And again, before I conclude, I noted that Mr. HORVICK, who is the host for this occasion, has two beautiful sisters from Korea. His parents has adopted these two young Korean girls as their children, as their sisters, and they have become quite a successful Korean American citizens or US citizens from Korea. I thank you very much for you and your parents. Thank you very much for your attention.
It's time for questions from the audience. Today we are going to open up questions from both members and guests. If you'd like to ask a question, please line up by the microphone here. City Club style of questions is that we keep them brief. They're a question and not a speech. Please direct them to one of the speakers or to both, whichever you choose. The first question today will be asked by board host John HORVICK. John is a member of the City Club Board of Governors. He is liaison to the New Leaders Council, and he is project director for the Parents and Children Together study at Oregon Health Sciences University. John.
Last week, the Iraqi Prime Minister was in South Korea to encourage South Korea to participate in the rebuilding effort. At the same time, South Korea is publicly talking about withdrawing its troops from Iraq. I was hoping that you could please comment on the United States and South Korea's relationship vis-a-vis Iraq, in particular, and the Middle East in general.
This issue of Korea's joining in the reconstruction effort of Iraq has been long debated. And from the beginning, when our country has decided to send our troops to Iraq, primarily this was to participate in the rebuilding of the country as a whole. We have sent 3,000 troops to Iraq, which is the third largest troop sending countries at the beginning of the war. Now we have drawn it down somewhat significantly. Still, we have about 1,500 troops there. Our next goal is, of course, to participate in the reconstruction effort rather more aggressively in the name of PRT, or RRT as we call it. This is a provincial reconstruction scheme or something like that. Yes, we are working very hard on this in close coordination with the United States and in close coordination with Iraq. What else we can do in the broader context of Middle East politics? At this stage, our relationship with the Middle East has become rather maintained well without participating in any of conflict other than sending some segment of peacekeeping troops. So perhaps I would say that that will be the most that we can think of at the moment.
Thank you. My name is Joanne Kahn. I'm a member of City Club. I'd like to start by thanking you for your remarks. We're very honored to have you here today. My question is about environmental policy. I would like you to comment, if you would, on as Korea industrializes, what are the current challenges, achievements, and goals that you have for environmental policy?
Environmental policy is quite an important state affairs as far as we are concerned. And if you could, factor into our discussions with particular emphasis on this environment, when we talked about this FTA, environment was also one of the key issues. And as far as I know, our environmental standard is very high. And therefore, we don't see any serious problems to deal with it. And this is why, in the case of environmental issues, we did not have any serious problems. So we are happy with the outcome. And of course, we share the concern that something got to be done to prevent global warming from having serious impact on our climate. We will have to do something about that. But U.S. is also determined to do something about that, and therefore our two countries know very well the importance of this issue, and we will coordinate in the future.
I would just mention the FTA commits both sides to very high standards of environmental protection. And I would say, as somebody who's living in downtown Seoul now for a year and a half, Korea has made enormous strides in improving environmental conditions in the country. Bigger problems are elsewhere in the region, where several days every spring, Korea is subjected to what's called yellow dust coming in from China, from the Gobi Desert. So obviously there are problems in the region, but Korea is part of the solution more than it's part of the problem.
Bob Geary, City Club member. I didn't know that question would be asked, but my question is similar on global warming. What has the Korean government legislated to cut greenhouse emissions?
You have this Kyoto Protocol, and you have this global regime dealing with global warming. Currently, we are a part of this global regime dealing with climate control, global warming control. We are given some kind of beneficial status that is not the Annex A of Kyoto Protocol. We are we belong to the Annex 2 countries, but that does not necessarily follow that we are exempted from very strict obligation and responsibility. That is why we say, because we were in the state of developing countries when this agreement was worked out, we were given some additional room to work out as far as this global warming was concerned. So we will be much more cooperatively engaged in the process, and yet I have to say that we do not belong to the first category of countries which are obliged to do something more significantly and strictly. So, but our two countries' economic relationship and our engagement with the international community would expand. We are duty-bound to do something more.
Roberta Palmer, City Club member. it seems that the United States is not that interested in the reunification of Korea, perhaps because we would like to maintain a military presence in South Korea. I wonder what you think the chances of reunification are, and can it be done without help from the United States?
Well, let me say that you're not correct in your basic assumption here. The United States is very much a believer and committed to the cause of Korean unification. I think that we work very closely with our South Korean allies in trying to achieve that goal. Clearly, a lot has to happen before unification becomes a more achievable goal. We first have to get through the process that we're trying to carry out in the six-party talks, which is to eliminate the nuclear weapons, establish a normal political relationship between the United States and North Korea, and formally end the Korean War and establish more stable and peaceful conditions on the peninsula. Then the tentative efforts that have been made to open up North Korea, to encourage reform, both economic and political change, which is the prerequisite to unification, can proceed. But we're very much interested in that process. We would like it to be an evolutionary process, not one based on the collapse of the regime in the North. But again, the nuclear issue stands in the way of serious progress, so the sooner we can get that behind us, the better.
Yes.
And let me just say that we don't want to just maintain our military presence by preserving the division of the two Koreas. We may see it as in our mutual interest to maintain military forces after unification as a factor for stability in the region, but that's something that our two governments will have to address when we get closer to that time.
Yes, there is no question that thanks to U.S.-Korea alliance partnership, Korea preserved its freedom and democracy during the Korean War and afterwards. And therefore, it is essential for Korea's security to have U.S. presence in my country. With this strong military alliance partnership, we can pursue a political sort of engagement with North Korea. If we don't have this strengthened military ties as we have between our two countries, we will not be in a better position to pursue our political reconciliation. On the basis of these military ties, we can go forward. How we could do that? Cold War has ended in Europe, and yet it is not ended in Korean Peninsula. That is why we need U.S. presence. That is why we need this strengthened relationship and alliance partnership. If we have a realistic and feasible vision for unifying our two countries, then we would be better off. So that's why we need U.S. presence at the moment, and that's why we can pursue our political reconciliation. The principle that we are pursuing at this moment, we need political reconciliation with North Korea so that we could make North Korea change to become a responsible member of the international community. But that cannot be done without the firm and strong security. That security is going to be guaranteed by our two countries' military partnership. But I'd like to say one more important thing, and that is that even after the unification, we need the presence of the United States in this region. This region, or Northeast Asia, has been fraught with serious big power rivalries and problems throughout the history. And therefore, after the unification, if you have China, Japan, Korea, which are very strong in terms of economy, very strong in terms of their national politics and nationalism, what would you foresee after the unification of Korea if some kind of stabilizing force is not present over there. That is why, even after the unification, I personally believe that U.S. presence in Korean Peninsula as a stabilizing force, not as an occupation force, as a stabilizing force, that is essential, and sometimes it's indispensable.
I'm sorry to say that we're out of time. On behalf of the City Club of Portland, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. I'd like to thank our radio and television audience for your interest in City Club, and ask you to join me in thanking Ambassadors Lee and Vershbow for a very interesting presentation. We are adjourned.